Cheaper fly fish food, we're tying a really cool squala. The Libby's squala. So yeah, it uses like a pound of CDC. Come check it out. It's Libby's time where it's CDC time all the time.
Yeah, that's a big brown.
All right, we're back again. Libby's Stone, the Salmonfly and Golden Stone flavors have been super successful. First of all, shout out to the whole Tire family. They let me stay at their house while I was up at an expo. So shout out to you guys. Here's another fly that is a takeoff on Libby's Stonefly. But we're gonna do Skwala flavor. So, all right, first thing you'll see here is Mustad Alpha Point, classic long dry. This is a super cool hook. Look how big that eye is on that thing. So really big eye on it. I've been tying on this one for several months, and I'm super impressed with the strength of the hooks. The hook points are chemically sharpened, and they're relatively inexpensive. So let's use them. I'm going to use some 12-aught nano silk. I'm using nano silk because there are parts of this fly where I need to apply a ton of pressure, and I need as little bulk as possible. So with this stuff on these hooks that are, it seems like Gamakatsu, Fulling Mill, Mustad, they're all coming out with these hooks that are like Teflon coated. And when you're tying with GSP, it's slick anyway. So I would just tack it a little bit with super glue. We're going to come in here and nuke that thread and dress my hook the rest of the way. Notice I'm not putting super glue down here. Once it's anchored in up here, it's on there. So what I'm going to do first of all is, that's kind of where my divider is. So in front of the thread's going to be the thorax, the behind's going to be the abdomen. And for this fly, we're going to use this Semperfli Dirty Bug yarn in dark olive, dirty dark olive, I believe. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie a piece of this on each side of the hook. It's good. It's not going to do a ton, but it will, flatten out the body, make the body a little bit thicker, because stoneflies kind of have thick bodies, like they've been eating just like 7-Eleven nachos their whole lives. All right, so we'll run this one along the other side. You can see, I'm trying to angle this a little bit so you can see what's going on, and then trim that off and then wrap all the way back. This is the point where I'm going to tie in some legs. So these are the small Life Flex legs from Hairline. Hairline does a really good job of not making them too crinkly and too curly. Now this one is kind of curly, but when you tie a small fly with it, the curl isn't as pronounced. So let's hope that works out. So we're going to tie in the little tails. I'm going to come all the way up here to do this, and I'm going to tie this in about like this. And tie that tail in kind of on the outside edge and wrap it all the way to the back, about like that. See how it kind of kicks off at an angle? That's what I'm going to try to do on the other side too. We'll just pull this one over, keep it nice and tight as I wrap it back exactly where I want it to go, which is right there. Yeah, I think that worked out great. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to trim those to length about right there, and you can see, there's one that he doesn't really want to play super well, but that's how the tails are on these little suckers. All right, for the body now, we're going to take our same yarn we built the sides with, tie in a little clump there, and wrap it back, and leave a tiny gap. See the tiny gap between where my thread stopped and where the tails are. because this is pretty bulky stuff and it can mess up the angle of our tails. So we'll just wrap it to right there, come all the way forward, and wrap this forward. I'll probably just use my rotary feature to do this. Sorry, not sorry. Rotary is the way of the future. All right, so you can see how that bulks up the body and without using a ton of thread wraps, but that's kind of our fat little Skwala body. All right, now for a structured wing. We're going to kind of tie it in right here on top of this body, because if I tied the wing in on the front of this ledge, it would just kind of angle up and weird. So what we're going to do is take a little bit of, I think I have some elk mane or some back strip or something like that. I have like enough to make a loincloth for a dang Sasquatch, you know, or a Yeti or some giant creature like that. And I'm only using this much at a time. So that's what 3 lifetimes worth of elk is if you're tying these. All right, we're just going to line those suckers up. Remember, always pull your hair out of the stacker the direction you want it to face on the fly. And you can see it's just kind of like a little flavor of elk. It's a little taste. It's not like a big bulky wing. I just kind of want a little bit of structure. The CDC on this fly is really what makes it float. So I want the wing to be about like this. And this elk kind of is the measuring point for the rest of the wing. So I'm going to put in just a few light turns. You can see I didn't even put enough pressure on that to flare the hair. It's because I don't want to flare the hair right there. I just want to tie it in right there. I'm going to advance my thread forward now and gather that hair together, and now I can pull tight and flare that down. And what that does is with those 2 bands of thread, my hair will now sit back on the fly, and I'm going to try hard not to screw that up as I tie the rest of the fly. So I'm going to trim off the butts. One hater decided to stick around. All right, now we're going to tie in the butts here. And this is where we're going to tie in some additional support for the wing. So on this one, I'm not really, I mean, we're going to have a color of CDC put in the recipe, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, I prefer this stuff. So see this right here, you can see that it's natural and it hasn't been dyed because, you know, the butts of them are all white, you know. So this is just a natural colored CDC. You know, some companies have all different names for it, but just find one of these that's kind of dirty and dark and natural and use it. So I've got the whole package. You can see I have a whole bunch of CDC feathers out. I dump them out on the table so I can farm through and get, you know, the best feathers for this purpose. You know, I'm using 3 feathers here for this wing, and, you know, frankly, you know, this feather's not really going to do it, but this might be a good feather for like a Euro nymph or something where I need just sparse CDC. But, you know, if you're going to tie a serious Skwala like this, use this. I think that's too much, actually. It's going to be too bulky. I'm going to back off. Those feathers were too good. So I'm going to take one off, and we're going to sparse it down a little bit. Stack the feathers nice again. All right, yeah, so about like that. You're going to put that on top, pinch it the same length as our elk hair, and again, you know, a couple snug-ish turns and then bring it forward and wrap down. And there is our overwing out of CDC. We'll get rid of the excess here. All right, now we're going to tie in some legs on this fly. So these are the back legs. Same material. And I will say this disclaimer from the get-go, I am not going to tie in little antenna on this fly. It's too small, just too much of a pain in the butt. So we're leaving them off. You can put them on if you want, but I'm not going to. But I'm going to put one leg here, right on this side of the fly where the wing starts. And I might wrap forward a little bit. That's easier said than done, especially when you're trying to make a fancy video. Let's see how that kicks out nice that way. I'm just going to grab this and bring it back over and place it on the other side at the same spot. All right, there we have it. Trim those off about halfway down the wing or something like that. Sorry if I'm all fingers, but you can see that's where I trimmed them. All right, so one of those popped free on me. I had to put it in again, but there you have it. Just two legs that are kicking off to the side like that. Again, one has its own ideas of where it should sit, but we're just going to let him play just like that. The next step is we're going to make, we're going to grab some CDC in our fancy CDC clamp. And I'm going to take 2 feathers worth, usually. Let's see what I can find here. All right, so stems are out. We've farmed out that CDC. Now I'm going to make a dubbing loop, about like that, and make sure to close off the back side of the dubbing loop. So once that's formed, I'm going to wrap the dubbing loop back, see where it's coming off the fly. It's right in front of the wing. And let's see, grab whatever dubbing twister you like. I'm going to grab this one. Let's see, the CNF. Let's put that in there. And when I put a dubbing loop, or when I put CDC in here, I like to put my left hand on the tool. The whole tool's in the loop. And I put my left hand here to feel when that thread pops out and hits my finger. And then I can take it off and get it out of there. All right, so there's my loop. We'll twist that all up. And this is tiny thread, so if it doesn't twist up enough, just brace your hook with your finger and just pull gently, and you'll twist it up the rest of the way. All right, so I'm just going to use the rotary feature again, and I'm just going to wrap that almost right on top of itself to form a little ball right there. Happens so fast you almost can't even see it happening. Twist your thread and your excess dubbing loop together and just tie that off and get rid of that thread. All right, so you can see we really have, a little bit of room in front of this fly still to play with. But before we get any further, just to keep proportions and everything, I'm going to trim the bottom of this fly. So you can see the bottom of the fly is all really, really dense CDC, so it's going to float really nicely. And I will show you at the end of this, but dip this in Flyagra when you're done with it and let it completely dry out, and it turns into a super weapon. You won't have to treat it for the rest of the day. Okay, I've prepped 3 more CDC feathers. Stacked them on top of each other, and I'm just going to you can see that I've aligned the curve as best I can. They're kind of laying perfectly on top of each other. And I'm just going to measure the end of the tail to the front of the thorax with the feather. So right here, kind of right there would be my tie-in point. So I tie it in right there. That way when I fold it over the thorax, this wing will stop just shy of this back wing. It looks real nice. So I'm going to take all those feathers, I'm going to preen them all forward, about like that. There's my measurement. It's pretty spot on. And we'll just tie that in right like that. You see how those rotated nicely? Now they're facing up, just like I was holding those on. So this is why I like to use the GSP here, is because I'm really cranking down on this. I need to be able to tie it down with very few wraps and then get in here and kind of force my scissors in to make a cut. And the GSP is nice and strong. It allows me to really crank down, so pretty sweet. All right, so now we're gonna form a head on this fly. You know what? Before we do that, let's pick this out a little bit. We're just going to loose some of those fibers. And then I like this Fulling Mill Ultra Dry Dub for the head. So it's just this, it's a synthetic dubbing that stays nice and buggy. It's very, very buoyant. But I'm just going to put this on here. And we're going to want a pretty dense head. So we're just going to take this dubbing noodle and I'm going to close it off. Okay. Even though my thread's in front of it, I can still wrap in front. All right. So close that off. We're going to twist this up now. There we go. And I'm just going to wrap this dubbing noodle in a ball right behind the eye of the hook. And by doing this method that I just did, it's the twisted dubbing loop method. I don't even know what they call that. The corded method? Jeez, I don't know. But it makes for a very, very dense ball of dubbing. Let's see how we turned out here. Yeah, that'll work. All right, so threads behind that head now. Hopefully that wasn't too disjointed. I was trying to focus while I was tying that. Not the easiest part of it. All right, so there we have a pretty bulky head. We have CDC going everywhere. That's fine. We can barely see the eye of our hook. That's fine as well, because we're just going to take all this stuff and pull it back over the top now. So we're going to pull that back over the top, wiggle it with our thumb a little bit, and then just tie it down. So you can see that. All these little fellas, you can pull them out if you want. You can leave them in. Man, those are durable. We're going to have to cut them. Open up that hook eye a little bit. All right. So now let's put some legs and an indicator on this. The hook eye's open. I can see it. There's just CDC going down in there. Trust me, she'll be just fine. All right, so we're going to take one leg, tie it in like this. Actually, I needed to make that longer. Tie it in about like that. Loop that around. And just tie that in on the other side as well. And again, with the nano silk, this creates very, very little bulk. So you can see how the legs are kind of curved a little bit, but when we trim them short, they're fine. You can do it that way. Or let's see if I push them all forward. Ooh, I was close. Like that. All right. So one final thing, this fly sits so low in the water, and it's by design. I mean, that's how stoneflies are. We're going to take a little tiny bit of like ultra dry yarn or some sort of yellow, or I mean orange yarn, and make a little indicator. Very, very thin amount. You really don't need a lot. I'm going to take my scissors and lay it down in here and just fold that over the top of those to create a little loop. The scissors are finer point than my big old sausage fingers. Let's see if I can get a pinch wrap to work here. All right, I need to make a bigger loop with the scissors. I'm on the struggle bus today. All right, moved it further forward. We're going to come up over the top, and we grabbed it. All right, don't collapse. It's important to talk to your flies as you tie them. There we go. See that? How hard did that have to be, little Skwala? All right. So now I like to take the indicator and cut it maybe 1/2 to 3/4 of the way up the wing. Tie it off like that. If you do just a yarn indicator like that, it resists wind a little less than a foam one. So the foam one's going to maybe get pushed around a little bit. Anyway, so once we're here, you can whip finish however you like. We're going to throw a little bit of super glue on that connection anyway, so I'll just do a little hand whip finish. Trim that off, put some super glue on it, and we have a stonefly in the Skwala flavor in the Libby's variety. So there you have it. Tie them, fish them, and smack every fish in the river.